Okay, so starting off, just a quick word on the registry update. DAF is not able to make it. See you in a bit, Scott. But he's been posting to the TST Slack channel as to status. So I imagine you're all up to date with that. The registry's up, but the biggest thing he's working on right now is reconstructing Docker base, which is an image that is necessary for quite a few things. If you are in the know about Docker base, because you were responsible for it from past life, then please let him know anything you know about it, because we're gonna, I mean, it's kind of a trial and error to reconstruct it until it has everything that we need to get our jobs through. Otherwise, I don't have any other information there. QA update. So I see there's some items in here. I don't know who wants to take the lead on this.
Yeah, sure, Larry. I'll take this up. This is Kunal. So, yeah, on UV ransom configuration and test definition, there's one of the tasks that we have worked on, and this one is done thanks to Gabriel and Mark for their inputs that really helped us to move into that direction and get unblocked from this. So now the UV ransom tunnel interface is coming up, and now we can see um, data going through the GTP tunnel as well. However, we are seeing a few issues with iPerf because we have seen that UE's interface, which is UESIM turn 0, has a limitation to allow packets below 68 byte only. So we are debugging that, whereas we have also checked all the parameters on interface like MTU size and all, which might affect this packet flow. But we are yet to find a root cause for this limitation.
Thank you. Just an FYI to everyone that hasn't been intimately involved in this. UE ransim is another simulator that we wanted to get running with Aether on ramp because it has iPerf built into it. We could add iPerf to GNB sim, but it has iPerf built into it, puts throughput stress on the core. So that is all running, except we need, of course, to get large enough packets through.
Right.
Oh, and then the second half of that is we have brought up, what GS Labs has done is brought up an iPerf server inside of the pod, inside of Aether, so that we can test between the simulated UE and the Aether core and have no dependency on a remote iPerf server. So we can get pure local throughput numbers. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead. I think maybe so that debugging of that packet limit is in progress.
Right. Yeah, a couple of tasks on SDRAN as well, because we have started working on integration test of SDRAN, and we did first deployment on SDRAN, and we have created a job for on ONF Jenkins to test the deployment regularly. So it's a nightly job, and the job is created on Jenkins successfully, and the deployment is successful so far. We are in discussion with Wujong on scope of testing, and we are going to create a document for SDRAN testing as well. So we have got some inputs from Wujong, and we will be start working on that side as well.
Thank you. And again, just a little scope context here. SD-RAN now comes up as part of Aether on-ramp. it all works. But what none of us knew is how to look at the results to know that it was in fact successful. I mean, it succeeds in deploying, but as RANSIM runs, how to know if it ran correctly. And so Wuzhong has provided the results to go look at. And we just need to incorporate those into the test so we could declare success or failure.
All right. Yeah.
And the final GNB SIM failure log.
Yeah, moving towards GNB-SIM failure logs, as we discussed in the last TST, we were seeing a few failures where um, 4 out of 5 UEs were getting passed and 1 or 2 UEs were getting failed. So for that, we have shared the logs with Ajay, and we are awaiting findings or maybe a fix for this issue. So if he's he faces any issues or if he needs some more logs from our end, we'll be happy to help. And we have also planned to create a shared folder, as Larry mentioned that we are planning to create a Google Doc which would be accessible to a larger audience. So whenever a test fails, we'll be writing logs there, and it would be accessible to the developers, and larger audience would be able to access it and debug there.
Thank you. Thank you. Just and again, a little more context. If you join the Aether Jenkins Slack group, your Slack channel, you get to see what failed every night. And they're consistent. I forget the exact number. There's on the order of a dozen tests that run, and a couple of them will fail every night. And if you look at the logs, you see that 4 out of 5 UEs successfully connected, but one of them didn't. And so, by definition, the test failed. But what we're trying to do is capture enough log information of those failures that we can pass it along to the SD core team. And if you have any thoughts on what needs to be collected there, please let us know. Please speak up. I mean, these are just tests. This is not all of this has to be automated. So it's not like I have a development environment that I am trying to reproduce a failure. We need to automate the process of, this is the log that we collect. That's all that's going to be there. Tell us what to collect. I assume the GNB SIM logs and maybe the AMF logs from any given run would be at least a starting point.
Right.
Speaking of the Jenkins is there a way to register for credentials to be able to see what's happening in Jenkins?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's come up before, and I'm going to take it up in the strategic issues below because it is a topic we need to figure out.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there are all kinds of security issues with granting community-wide access. We'll get to it below. It is a strategic issue we need to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So progress made there. SD-RAN. I see Alex on. I'm not sure if anyone else from that group is, but Alex, if you can tell us what you know.
So we had a meeting earlier today with the RANSIM, and Wujong shared his updates there basically, and what the plan there is for him to come up with a POC of the new architecture of the RAN simulator, and he's currently working on it. He's designing some APIs and also some APIs for the Kubernetes controller that we will use when deploying SDRAN not SDRAN, sorry, RANSIM components, because we will break the monolith into specific containers, each with different functionality. And he's also using now some Kubernetes CRDs to describe what he needs and not YAML files, which is good. So the estimation is that in 2 weeks he will be able to provide a small demo of this new architecture. Yeah, and that's it for the RAN sim.
All right, so I believe the news is now semi-official. I will share it here in vague terms because I'm not exactly sure of what has been or not been signed. But as you know, we've been working on a grant to support energy research on the RAN, and that is now to be awarded. So that's a major new funding coming in to support SD-RAN, the RAN sim and a variety of applications and demos. So more specifics will be coming in the near future, but I'll probably just leave it at that there is a major award that's about to happen or in the process of happening. What's the right verb here? I'll just call it in progress, but it's well along. Well, let me say is happening without being specific about exactly what state it's in. All right, anything else on RAN? I didn't put the core up here as a separate topic, but if there are issues to talk about with the core, happy to do that now.
Very quick question for the RAN research, right?
Yeah.
Today, ONF does not have a RAN, right? I mean, SD-RAN pretty much is a RIC, right? Will ONF get a RAN to be able to work at the DU or CU level, or the work will?
Yeah, so I probably shouldn't comment specifically on it. I haven't been in the middle of all of it, but it's
Okay.
a lot of, from a research point of view right now, and this is related to specifically to RANSIM, it's R apps and not X apps at the focus.
Sure, okay.
But it's, it's got enough breadth to it that where there's interesting leads, they can be followed.
Okay.
Okay, so that brings us to this vague topic that I just put on the agenda because I wanted to spend some time kind of stepping back from the day-to-day, week-to-week stuff we typically talk about here and kind of do I don't know, maybe an assessment of where we are and where the biggest holes, where we've made good progress, where there's still progress to be made, but we kind of know what we're doing, and where we haven't really scratched the surface at all yet, and there may be issues just under the surface that we need to start paying attention to. I didn't call it out specifically but I want to because it was technically on my mind. Let me just call it Jenkins. Actually, it's part of testing. I'll just put it part of testing, and we can sub-bullet that. Okay, so and I just listed the source repo access first because it's an example of a strategic high-level topic that we have already started to address, but it kind of gives us an example. So, for example, for all of our, what are our major repos? It's OMEC, Open Network, yeah. I think it's Open Networking Lab, technically, is what it's called.
Yeah, it's ONOS project.
An ONOS project. So for those projects, we have started to think about, who has access, what that access is. So, I mean, it would not be a strategic discussion to dive down into the details of that. But for example, I went through Open Networking Lab and archived a whole bunch of repos, and I drastically pruned back the set of users that had write access to it. Sean, did you make any progress like that on the Onos project?
I didn't, Larry, but it's something that I can start on.
Okay, good.
Larry, I was actually trying to get the access to that Excel file. I'm not sure who's owning
it. Could you say that again?
I was trying to access the Excel file where I believe the list of repositories are mentioned.
Oh, yeah, I granted access to that,
Okay,
AJ, so
just
hopefully you can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's nice. Whoops, it's nice that we have an owner, so to speak, for each one of these, and we can discuss general issues here that we like to organize across the projects, but across the repos. But this is a good start. So yeah, I didn't want to go down too far into the weeds there, but this is an example. We need to bring some rationality to access to the repos. And we can. I don't want to rush us through this, but if there's more to say there, we can do that. But I think there's a lot of other interesting stuff coming down the list here. Okay, as for QA testing, it's something that we have put some time into. We now have a set of nightly integration tests. Access to Jenkins is an issue. So let's just talk about that one a little bit. The issue in my mind, so there's this actually came up recently with another community member who wanted access, and I sort of went back and tried to reconstruct the rationale and got the rationale, which is opening the community access. Right now, there's not fine-grained access. You either get full access and you can read and write, or nothing. So we would have to go through the process of layering on some kind of levels of access, which we could do. But I think the right answer I'm going to put out is that what we really ought to be doing is not using the GUI except totally read-only. And what we're not doing with integration tests, which we need to do, is basically check them into a repo and pull them out of there. I think it was Mark that raised that issue. Is that maybe the right?
I'm sorry, can you say that?
So let me try to put it into words. We can either layer access control onto Jenkins, various levels, which would take some effort but is doable. Or what I believe we should be doing is defining all jobs in a repo with standard access, see above.
Are you talking about the job definition itself for Jenkins?
I'm talking about the job definition itself.
Yeah, so that won't, I mean, Jenkins itself will either want, yeah, I see what you mean now by layered. Yes, we definitely would want layered. I mean, ideally, it would be great if we could open it up such that anonymous users could browse. I don't know if any of the jobs contain any confidential information or, ONF specific information that we wouldn't want anonymous for. But yes, there's some relatively simple ACL and RBAC that can be put in Jenkins. Now, in terms of the job definitions themselves and how that gets in and out of Jenkins, that's a whole other set of procedures. But also would be something really good to have, specifically considering backup strategies and whatnot, and the recent incident we just had with the wiki. So having the jobs backed up in, as some sort of Git sync would be great as well.
Yeah. I mean, the jobs, the integration jobs have been defined through the GUI, and that's just not the right approach long term, or even medium term. So it's a great. I'm glad you raised this, because it's exactly one of these strategic things that we need to be aware of. We've got some great tests. We need to apply the discipline to have them defined with repo support. It's not just the access. It's also, as you pointed out, it's also the backup.
Yeah.
Let me just call that out specifically to be clear. Both history. I mean, technically you get change history, but in Jenkins, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a nice. I mean, it's work to be done, but it kind of captures it captures something that needs to happen.
Okay.
At some point.
Yeah, I'll hold my hand up in terms of helping with that effort if there's anything that I can do.
Oh, excellent. Let me just mark it here. Good. I'll circle back if I need to bring Joey and Daff into the conversation, but we should do that.
Nope, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. So more broadly, we focused a little bit on Jenkins there. More broadly, are there things on people's mind with respect to testing that needs thought or attention that worries you?
Well, I've noticed that service restart, and I think we've opened it from Ghislaine and some of the others on the Canonical team. I think we've opened some PRs about this. But I've noticed that if a service restarts, not all the services can be restarted and come back into an operational state. And so I'm just sort of wondering if this is something that we're experiencing, or if this is generally the experience. And if so, should we start looking at any sort of destructive testing or resiliency testing? And that's in SD core, yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So as you started talking, I was thinking of this. Okay, this is something that SD core as a component needs to pay attention to. You're right, there's testing to it, but it feels to me a little bit bigger than just that we don't have the right tests. That would be my robust restart. And I think we see timing issues just generally, that when some part of the system goes down and comes back up, it gets stuck because ordering of events.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark, thanks for pointing it out. I did see one of the pull requests on this topic. So the design point of view, it should work. I mean, any service except probably the Mongo database restart, right? The rest of the services we should be able to restart, and it should come up and remain functional. And if it is not, that means there is something which we have added and that's causing the trouble, right? So
on that front, on
testing it, yeah.
Yeah, in Canonical, I've been working on some of the fixes, PRs. We highlighted some issues. We opened
Yeah.
3, I think, different PRs for that. And the way I did it is I have a server locally that I run, um, kind of chaos testing where I just select a pod at random and kill it, and wait for a new pod to be put in its place, and then just run another simulation, and hopefully the simulation works. But there's been a couple of instances where certain pods, if killed, the whole core was failing to run the simulation. So once we have those PRs merged and we're able to test, I'll definitely continue running that and see if I can find more issues like that. But hopefully that was all, and it will be more stable now. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll definitely look more into that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm recording this in 2 different places. I think this is SD core specific, but it also points back to the testing. There's more comprehensive SD core tests, which we're now talking about, and I think in a similar vein, more comprehensive API tests. And that's been on it's already been on the to-do list for a while, but it sort of falls down in priority. And I'm sure we'll find similar things on SD-RAN. Okay. Yeah, treat this as brainstorming. If you see something that isn't quite captured here, raise it. Let me give you a sense of what's on my mind with integration. We have a really full-featured CI definitions. I forget the exact repo. It's probably called Aether CI management, maybe. Jenkins job builder defined sequence of steps to integrate code and pre-merge, post-merge, and all of that. The problem right now is the active Jenkins is not synced with that. If that makes any sense, it was auto-generated. A set of jobs were generated from the repo, but that was several months ago. It's not been done again. There's been some by hand editing of Jenkins, not reflected therefore in the CI definitions. The CI definitions, by the way, also need to be pruned because it has a whole bunch of stuff that we don't do anymore. So the high level bullet here is it's out of sync and needs attention. To me, it feels like one of the most brittle and high risk aspects of everything we're doing. And we see little glimpses of it when a particular thing breaks, and we've been band-aiding those things as opposed to going back to the source and making sure we have a robust CI pipeline. This is in the, help me if I get this wrong. I think it's Aether CI management.
Yes, yeah, Larry, it's Aether CI management.
Yeah. But this is, again, it's the kind of thing that, we need to just trying to list all the things that we need to worry about it. What should be keeping us up at night? This is pretty high on the list for me. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? So continuous deployment, this is where OnRamp provides, how do I say it? Let me just call it a framework because it'll never be complete. Yeah, let me call it an Ansible-based framework. And I think we now have a, let me call it a process for adding new, additional features. They probably shouldn't call them new because they all worked at one time, or a lot of them worked at one time. Like a different simulator, like including SD-RAN, like including multiple UPFs and so on. I think a whole here is helping developers take advantage of it. It was really designed, OnRamp was really designed for people who are trying to deploy Aether. Once you have it deployed, you may want to change it. And so I think there's a gap there. I think it's fillable, but there is a gap there. I don't know. Again, this is brainstorming, and I'm just writing stuff down here as it occurs to me. Is there anything else to say there?
Yeah, so there be a question here, right? There is, OnRamp, which we have deployed here, which we like, right? It seems to make stuff easier, right? I mean, some universities also, Purdue, Cornell. Now, there is also, the ongoing DARPA Pronto, right? Which is using, Aether Central, right? With the control plane, the ROC, everything being deployed in Google Cloud, right? There seems to be also, ongoing Pronto interest to continue with other side, right? Do you think we should push for a transition to EtherRamp here, or maintain both along the way? I mean, softwares themselves are the same software component, right? It's a deployment method which is different, right?
Yeah. So OnRamp, my definition of OnRamp, my explanation of OnRamp is that it was an alternative to what was happening with the Aether Central deployment.
Right.
Because to me, it was without having, I don't know, Andy and Youngsun, attached to it. It was very hard. Mm-hmm. And so just from a historical point of view, the whole motivation for OnRamp was to bypass Aether Central. Maybe bypass isn't the right word, but make it so it wasn't necessary to that you did everything that Aether Central did with Rancher and Terraform and all of that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so the transition in my mind is the path that we decided on at ONF a year ago or whatever. And I know that I've heard that Gabriel, for example, is trying to help out. My advice would be to try to wean the users off of Aether Central, because I can't imagine how hard that is. I mean, I can't imagine, but it's got to be kind of frustrating because that code is so old, and people that kept it running are long gone.
Right, and it took us quite some time. I mean, Suresh is also here on the line, and Gabriel, to get, and with the help of Andy, of course, right, to help fix issues, at Cornell and Princeton, right? But yeah.
So I know Andy's on the call. Andy, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, not particularly.
Okay.
Yeah, my question would be, it's more, and we can take this offline, Larry, right? If there are new Pronto potential site, right, or Pronto extension, right? Should we shift the new one to on-ramp, right?
That would be my that would be what I would do.
That would be what would I prefer to, right? We probably need to have maybe a joint discussion with DARPA if if this is happening, right?
Yeah, and
because also sorry to cut you, but if suddenly a new project also include multiple sites across the world, right? Well, someone will need to handle the central aspect again of Ether, right? I mean, Intel has Intel Cloud, Dev Cloud will be happy to offer it, right? But there will be the same question, right? When we have multiple edges, where is the central location being managed, being coming from? Right?
Yeah. So let me just on that specific question, supporting multiple sites is on OnRamp's roadmap. Mm-hmm. It's not that OnRamp can't do it; it just hasn't done it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it would do it in an Ansible-based way. It would not do it with Terraform and Rancher. Mm-hmm. So there's work to be done though, because we haven't done that particular config.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if someone wanted to take that on, I would be glad to help them, because it would be a great capability to bring back. I mean, this has been an incremental process where you take something that didn't work with Ether Central and the old, the centrally managed Ether, and you bring that capability back into OnRamp one
component at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all the ROC mechanisms are there. Monitoring will probably take a little attention, because there was central monitoring and per site monitoring, and then the sites got aggregated back in the central. That would be a little extra something, but the rest of it should be pretty straightforward, I think. Maybe not designed in a way that scaled to thousands of sites, but in terms of demonstrating the capability, it would be enough. Yeah, that from a strategic point of view, that's maybe that's a pretty big one. That needs to happen. Anything else on CD? All right. I don't know what specifically to say about feature releases. It feels like we, with everything else on this list, are at a point that we could be a little bit more rigorous and prescriptive about what it meant to stamp a release and declare it done. Other than that, I'm not sure what to say on this one. I'm just saying we're close. Maybe we're closer to being, or I don't know if there's more to say on that or not. Even to define what a release means, for that matter. All right. Well, hopefully this is helpful to me to hear various points of view on it.
Larry,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
Could I just raise one thing that I didn't really know which section it would go into. I would kind of put it under the category of link rot, inside code. So say for instance, like in, if we have Go modules we commonly get, Dependabot telling us that, this library is not safe to use anymore and your repo depends on it.
Yep.
There's always that kind of thing going on. And I think that needs a place in the strategic plan too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It almost feels
Module rot is another kind of
yeah,
word that
there you go.
describe it.
Oh, what's the other phrase here? Not bit rot. There's you got to just keep the software fresh with all the yeah. So to me, almost every one of these, it almost feels like what we need to do is we need to define someone that owns or a group of people that own that problem. Now, module rot, it would be per component, per
Yeah.
So where did you recently see an email from about an out-of-date module that triggered this for you? I think I got one about Jinja 2 this morning.
Let's even just take Honest Live Go. This is something that has like a lot of Go dependencies. I can't say in particular it has a Dependabot alert, but I'm pretty sure it must have. And like Honest Live Go, is something that, the CI is broken for us. And we can't do new releases, we can't fix dependencies. So it kind of goes back into the CI, but it's not CI, it's a separate problem on its own.
Yeah. Well, so I completely appreciate that Honest Live Go problem with respect to CI. If we took that off the table just for a second, who would do that?
Who would fix these dependencies?
Yeah.
It's somebody that was concerned about the warnings. So generally, sometimes it can be a big job, sometimes it can be a small job. In the ONF days, and even in Intel, we're constantly, playing catch up with dependencies like this. And it's automated to a certain extent by this GitHub Dependabot, but not fully. It's not always as simple as that.
Yeah, in some respect, almost everything on this list you could argue comes down to who owns this problem. That was where we started with source. Who owns the repos and can say who gets access to it. That's kind of at a meta level, going down into the code and making sure that it's all right. So who owns SD core? Who feels responsible for it? There's clearly people working on it and they would take ownership of it, but this maybe is a little bit more generic.
Yeah. It should be a simple case of, somebody could manage several of these repos and just, accept the Dependabot suggestions. But then you come to a situation, say for instance, Honest Live Go, say I accepted all the Dependabot warnings on that, and I decided then I'm going to have a new release of Honest Live Go. And then, there's a whole trickle down then of like, I know Rock API uses it, I know Honest Config uses it, I know, several different other components use it, and, they have a trickle down dependency, or trickle up, I guess, dependency on these things. And, it becomes a big maintenance task then, Larry,
Yeah. And that's the crux of it, because it's maintenance. It's not advancing anything. It's maintenance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you would
Yeah,
like you always want someone else to do maintenance so that you can do the new thing.
yeah, and you want somebody who's happy to do maintenance, because not everybody is.
Yeah.
You know, it can be seen as a chore. And you know, the thing is, without it, you can easily get to a point that no maintenance has been done for a year, and then big changes are needed. Or else it's just to a point that nobody can figure out what all the dependencies are. And, you know, things can get into trouble. So, I mean, you talked about, you know, new source of research funding. You know, I think those kind of maintenance costs have to be factored into to whatever budget is there, because you know, it's really the people that are using it want it to be maintained.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I'm trying to tease out, there's maintenance. And on that point, you're exactly right, Sean, and that is part of the budget. So the big news for this group is, you know, it's great that there's some interesting research happening here. The big news for this group is that as part of that, there will be some additional, you know, it's a fraction of the whole thing, but there'll be some additional resources available for the things that we all benefit from. So it's not unlike that, you know, everything related to Jenkins and the registry. You know, having people like DAF, or, you know, imagine we figured out how to grow the set of people that were DAF-like. And we could do that. I mean, if we had the funds for it, we could do that. And then we would have solved that problem with money, so to speak. If we can't do that, then the only alternative is either someone who would rather be doing something else pitches in, and there's enough of us that it works, or we all suffer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you would describe as technical debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I mean, I don't have to explain to anyone here, if the value of your technical debt exceeds the value of your asset, then you're in negative territory, and it's not worth you know, going near that project.
Yep.
Yeah, for that's something that specifically on SD Core, we as Canonical have been doing some work on that, on the technical debt, and we are happy to continue helping with that. There's definitely some issues regarding all the infrastructure support required to make those changes and push them in. So right now there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem on that front, where we do want to fix some of that technical debt, but there are roadblocks to doing that, mostly around reviewing PRs, merging PRs, having the CI work properly, things like that. So definitely, Mark already mentioned being willing to help on that. I can also put my name in there. As we are using SD Core more and more on our side, we are definitely we have some stakes in the project and making sure that it succeeds. So definitely, we want to be able to help on that also.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, what did we talk about it earlier? Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff is in fact the infrastructure. I mean, there are specific tests, but there's the testing infrastructure. There's the pipelines that keep getting bogged down for one reason or another. So, all right, so that's good. I mean, there are people with a stake and are willing to step up. We just need to figure out the right way to take advantage of that. And we probably are always going to need additional people like DAF and perhaps others as well. Well, this is a great first shot at this. I'm not quite sure how to translate this into a set of action items, but maybe we can put some thought into that and at least define next steps next time. So if you think about each one of these and you can come up with a next step, what one thing would push us ahead. And I think we've got some examples here from Canonical that if we could give them access to certain things, they're ready to jump in and help. And I'm sure others would be. I have seen evidence of others as well. Is there anything else? All right, so thanks everybody. I think this is really productive and to be continued.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.